Thanks for coming back for part 2. Let's take a look at those sentences again. What's the subject of the first sentence? It is not nosotros, we. What about the second sentence? Nope, not me. You are thinking that I and we is the subject of these sentences when actually these sentences have invisible subjects. Me molesta que mi hermana no me conduzca al colegio. It frustrates me that my sister doesn't drive me to school. So the subject, it, is invisible. Don't confuse the indirect object, me, te, le, nosos, les, with the subject of it. No olvides. The feeling or emotion must be a reaction to what happens in a separate clause. Because we need 2 people for our wedding, and we need 2 different clauses with 2 different subjects to use the subjunctive. So let's take a look at what happens in these examples. Me sorprende no tener tarea esta noche, because we don't have a separate new subject for tener. It surprises me to not have homework tonight. ¿Te alegra de siempre resolver los problemas? Does it make you happy to always solve problems? So if you look at the first example here, I like that my friends are not jealous. It does have 2 clauses, it does have 2 subjects, and liking something is a trigger. So you do need the subjunctive. Me molesta que mis amigos no sean celosos. But if you look at the second one, it irritates her to eat with a vulgar person. There aren't 2 separate clauses because there aren't 2 separate subjects. It would be our invisible subject. Her is not a subject, it's just the indirect object. So, le irrita comer con una persona vulgar. Go ahead and try numbers 3 and 4. How'd you do? Remember to make your corrections in pen rather than erasing your mistakes. That way you can go back and see the mistakes you make the first time and avoid making them again. One more note. This number 2, le irrita comer con una persona vulgar, just remember, this is the same as what you did back in Spanish 1 when you learned not to conjugate a verb after me gusta. Me gusta jugar al basquetbol. It's the same deal. Now, while there may be times we want to express our emotions towards something, there will also be times we want to state something as an objective fact or belief. Just like you did with sentences at the beginning, let's take a moment and translate each one of these to English, circling sí or no after translating to indicate whether or not you agree with each statement. Then make any observations you have about the underlined verbs in the main clause and the italicized verbs in the dependent clause. Pause the video while you complete this section. Make sure to check your translations, but let's talk about those underlined verbs. They all have indicative endings and all express what the person thinks or believes to be true. The italicized verbs also have indicative endings, not subjunctive. So these sentences make it appear as though the subjunctive is necessary in the dependent clause, since we've got 2 subjects and 2 clauses, but the indicative is used instead. Why would we do that? Because if the main clause states fact or belief, then the indicative is used. Again, if there's no change of subject, remember to use the infinitive. This goes back to our very first introduction to subjunctive as a mood that expresses something subjective, as opposed to the indicative, which expresses something objective. If someone states that what they think or believe to be true from the speaker's perspective, the message being communicated is objective, which does not provide the proper context for the use of the subjunctive. Again, remember that if there's no change of subject, you need to use the infinitive. The verb pensar que and creer que will not be used with the subjunctive. For example, pienso que mi novia va a romper conmigo. I think my girlfriend's going to break up with me. Creo que mis amigos son amigables. I believe that my friends are friendly. In both of these sentences, there is a verb that expresses what is thought to be true or objective from the point of view of the speaker, so therefore the indicative must be used. Pause the video, give this one a try. How'd you do? Thanks for joining me.